Will Putin survive the Ukraine war? As the February invasion of Ukraine went off, there seemed to be an aura of optimism in mainstream Western media regarding the weak support base of the Russian President Vladimir Putin and how this blunder of an operation would likely lead to his downfall. As photos of Moscow protests and rumors of discontent oligarchs widely circulated in Western media, it was easy to get an impression that Putin's name finally had been written on the wall. An average news consumer would get the impression that it was only a question of time before the battle losses and economic sanctions would run this imperialist thug over.
The sanctions we opposed exceed anything that's ever been done.
For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
It is difficult to say how much of the narrative of Putin's weak position was an actual delusion by Western elites and journalists, or if it was a way of safeguarding support for Ukraine. In any case, confirmation bias can be substantial, especially when looking for signs of weakness in an adversary. Many Russians oppose the invasion and would like to see Putin replaced by a more liberal and Western-oriented leader. It is also true that Putin has experienced a surge of popular support since the outbreak of the war. Levada is an independent polling agency that is considered the most reliable information on the Russian population, collecting monthly data on various social issues. Polling of Putin's approval rating shows a giant peak since the February invasion. These results directly contradict the assumption that Putin has a weak support base. Given the support, we can see after the annexation of Crimea in 2014, and now after the 2022 invasion, one can even speculate that part of Putin's motivation for the invasion was to consolidate his power and strengthen the social capital of the Russian population. For Westerners, it might seem counterintuitive of Putin to start a bloody war to forge political support. We have to be wary of our own confirmation bias. According to Levada polls, the population's assessment of the situation in the country is at an all-time high. How can we understand Putin's support? Firstly, we should not underestimate group psychology. If there exists an outgroup that may pose a threat, real or imaginary, to your group, there is a strong human tendency to accept information that favors your group. Westerners think of NATO only as a defensive alliance, but US involvement in Ukraine was explicitly aimed at inspiring a color revolution in Russia. The West justifies this by talking about freedom, democracy, and a people's right to self-governance. Still, Putin will not accept this and has taken active measures to frame the narrative for his people and activate their solidarity and patriotism by exaggerating NATO and US threats. When the collective West started the unprecedented sanctions and cancelled Russian culture en masse, it's not hard to see that this further triggered the group psychology of the Russian people, increasing support for Putin and the war. Secondly, Putin is carving out a viable alternative to Western liberalism. Putin has taken steps to re-emphasize traditional Russian culture and strengthen the position of the Russian Orthodox Church. Putin conveniently points to the Western culture war as proof that Western liberalism is decadent and not a viable option for Russia. In this project, Putin seems to take influence from the famous philosopher and geostrategist Alexander Dugin.
Why is he listening to you?
I'm trying first of all to give way to ideas, to reveal what we have forgotten during communism, during party debates between the left and right, communists, Tsarists, liberals. Putin takes what he thinks useful in practice.
According to Dugin, people can be meaningfully distinguished in different civilizations with different histories, leading them to affirm different values. Dugin argues that liberal democracy and modernism are unique Western products that should not be adopted by Russia unthinkingly.
We need to find real freedom elsewhere, not inside of modernity, not in liberalism, but outside of liberalism, but as well outside of communism and fascism. So that is invitation to think beyond these limits, and that is the sense of my fourth political theory.
Dugin is critical of the influence liberalism has had on Russian society, especially in educational institutions.
Now, the totalitarianism, the Orwell, or rather Huxley, the most important enemy of the freedom now is the negative freedom of totalitarian liberalism. The States of America became a kind of symbol of this globalization, of this liberalism, of this unipolarity with one set of values imposed as something inevitable, as a kind of destiny to all the humanity.
According to Dugin, there needs to be a purification process of the Russian spirit to overcome the decadence of the liberal ideology and enter into a new era of Russian history. Dugin sees the invasion of Ukraine as a necessary leap of faith into this new era.
The situation in Syria, on Ukraine, that's only the case to prove that. We don't want that, but we understand that if we will be not ready to pay all the price for that, we could not gain.
The void left by the end of communism ideology is filled by religion. Little by little we are returning to religious world vision. Orthodox Christianity, the influence and authority is growing in the society as a whole.
Will Putin survive in the future? While Putin may have hoped for better results on the ground in Ukraine, it is not at all evident that he is not content with the current situation if he can make an agreement that secures Ukraine from being out of NATO. He still has support at the home front and can most likely absorb significantly more losses before the tide of popular opinion turns against him. Economics will be an essential factor in the coming months. Although the Western sanctions on the Russian economy have not had a huge immediate impact, they have placed a dent in the Russian economy. Also, according to the Russian finance minister, the effects will first be fully realized in the autumn of 2022. One also must remember that sanctions have been a double-edged sword, and it is uncertain whether Europe will manage to uphold sanctions against Russian energy as the winter arrives. Although the Russian citizens may seriously be affected by the economic situation, it is not apparent that financial hardships will necessarily mean a political defeat for Putin. The Russian people have endured much more demanding trials in the past. However, economic sanctions may impair the Russian war industry to the point where Putin has to reduce his goals on the battlefield if Ukraine simultaneously continues to receive material from the West. To conclude, Putin does sustain broad political support from the Russian population. Putin will most likely remain in power for the foreseeable future, even if he sustains significantly more battle losses on the ground in Ukraine. In the longer term, Putin's approval will depend on how attractive his Dugin-inspired traditional civilization shift will be for the Russian population. What do you think about Russia's near and long-term future? Leave a comment down below.